Hello, and welcome to Rough Edges Podcast with Sarah I. Fox. In this podcast, I will guide you through my faith and mental health journey to dispel the stigma surrounding mental illness and to create an empowering resource for those who wish to discover more about these topics. I pray that this podcast will not only bless you, but that it will bring growth and healing to our communities. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Rough Edges. Today, I'm doing a solo episode that's going to be about what it means to be a Black woman with bipolar disorder. And not only a Black woman with bipolar disorder, but a Christian Black woman with bipolar disorder. This episode comes from an Instagram post that I made for the month of National Minority Mental Health, which was last month by the time that this episode is released. I wanted to post about that because I noticed, especially as I was first diagnosed with bipolar disorder, that there weren't many people who look like me who were talking about these issues. So I'm going to go over 4 aspects from that post and kind of do a little breakdown of my own experiences as a Black Christian woman with bipolar disorder and what that means in terms of raising awareness about these issues. The first aspect of what it means to be a Black woman with bipolar disorder is that people who look like me can also speak about mental health issues. And I find this point really important because it's the reason why I decided to start the Rough Edges podcast. And just a little origin story on the podcast. So I was diagnosed in January of 2021 with bipolar 1 disorder. And with that diagnosis came a lot of questions. I received a packet while I was in the hospital, and one of the nurses, she said, "Here's your diagnosis, and if you have any questions, you could feel free to ask me or any one of the other nurses or doctors to find out more information." So I look at this packet, and at the very top in bold letters was the words bipolar disorder. And when I tell you that I was distraught and confused and just angry about the fact that I had such a severe mental health condition. And up until that point, I didn't really have a context for what bipolar disorder looked like. I just knew from people saying that the weather was bipolar, from people saying that you're bipolar because you have like you're happy one minute, you're sad the next, and I didn't really know how to wrap my head around it. So a couple months later, I decided to do my own research and to really see how I could manage bipolar disorder. But in doing my research, and thankfully I did find some very helpful podcasts and YouTube videos and articles and books about the issue, but I noticed that there was an overwhelming lack of Black women speaking about living with bipolar disorder, living as a Christian with bipolar disorder, and also living with a mental health condition as a Christian. Like, I didn't see many people who look like me talking about those issues. And the reason why I even wanted to start the podcast, which didn't start off as a podcast, it kind of started off as like me wanting to do a website or a blog and write about my experiences and kind of do like a, little journal entry as to, what my daily life with bipolar disorder looked like. And through the encouragement of some friends and just a little bit of a push from some other friends who were podcasters, I started the podcast, and here we are today, me talking about my story with anybody who is listening right now. So thank you so much for supporting and tuning in. But I noticed in starting the podcast that there is solidarity and representation. And that feeling of I am not alone is a very powerful feeling. That feeling of being able to see someone who looks like you, who is speaking about these issues that you as well want to know about and talk about and share with everybody else. Like seeing somebody who not only looks like you, but is able to share or live vicariously through your experiences as well. That gives you a sense of belonging and it gives you a sense of community. And it also gives you a sense of confidence and vulnerability to be able to share your story with other people. And so that's what this podcast did for me. It gave me a sense of community and it gave me a sense of belonging. And it also gave me a sense of just me not feeling like I'm the only Black woman on the planet that is going through this. And I know I'm not, but I didn't see a lot of people who look like me talking about these issues. And so I am just so glad that this podcast is able to just bring that solidarity and bring that community to people who feel alone. And it also encourages like mental health treatment and awareness because as Black people, I can say for myself as well, we don't really seek out mental health treatment. We don't really go to therapy. We don't really like taking medication. I mean, I definitely don't. And you may be thinking, well, isn't that everyone? Like, a lot of people don't like to take medication or go to therapy. But for me, at least, as a Black woman, and the context and the culture that I grew up in, it was always a matter of, oh, you can't really go to a therapist because you don't want to air out the family laundry, or you don't want to take medication because, as a Black woman and a woman of faith, it might indicate a lack of faith, or it might also indicate that there is something wrong with you and that you are weak. And so, coming from that standpoint, it's really hard to buy into the fact that you need mental health treatment and you need to see a therapist or a psychiatrist or take medication on a daily basis because you don't want to feel like you're weak or you don't want to feel like you're betraying your family by airing out the dirty laundry. And so there are just like a lot of layers to people seeking treatment. If they do not see people who look like them, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to see even the benefits of doing so themselves. So, me and other people like me who are speaking up, other people of color who are speaking out about their experiences with bipolar disorder, can really just encourage the development of not only raising mental health awareness, but also raising solidarity within an enclosed community. The second aspect of what it means to be a bipolar Black woman is that my condition does not indicate a lack of faith. So this one kind of ties into the fact that I am a Christian woman and I grew up in a Christian household and I also grew up in a Christian context and my perspective is shaped by the word of God. And so with that, I really linked my faith to my mental health condition. And when I first got diagnosed, I immediately thought that God was mad at me. I thought that he was punishing me for something. I thought that he was getting so upset with me for not reading my Bible enough, not praying enough, because in the moment I thought, why else would I have bipolar disorder if God did not allow this to happen? And why else would God allow this to happen if he wasn't angry at me? So that line of logic took a while for me to actually heal through. I don't want to say heal from, I want to say heal through because I'm still working through it and I haven't really arrived to the point where I can say that, hey, I got over that. But for the sake of being real in this episode, I had to struggle to believe that God still loved me, even though I had bipolar disorder. Faith is important to me. And according to my experiences in the Black community, we are a very spiritual people. We love going to church, love reading the Bible. love coming together to worship God. And at least for me, that's the context of what I grew up in. I grew up in church. Like my family members were officers in the church, they held positions in the church, they were trustees, they were elders, they were pastors. And so, with that, I had a very religious and very traditional view of what it meant to be a Christian. And growing up in that context, you are often led to believe that if God loves you and if your faith is strong, you will have an abundant life. And if things do not work in your favor, or if you don't have that abundant life, all of a sudden it's like God is angry at you, God is punishing you. And I had to revolutionize that way of thinking. And I had to really get to know who God is. The God that I serve is a good God, and He is a God of love. And no matter what I'm going through, I know that He is with me in that valley. He is with me in those dark times. And so He is not angry at me for being sick. He is not angry at me for having a mental health condition. Because when you have the flu, at least under normal circumstances, I'm sure your parents are not going to be extremely livid that you are sick. And the thing is, God is the same way. He's not angry at you because you have this. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain, it is a psychological disorder, and it is a mental health condition, and it's a very real condition. And God is not punishing you because you are going through this. And whoever's listening to this, I just want to encourage you that your mental health condition is not indicative of your character. It does not mean you are a bad person. And it also does not mean that you have a lack of faith. It just means that you are going through a tough time in dealing with the condition that you just got information about and that you're frankly not informed enough about, and a condition that is very heavily stigmatized. And so, honestly, that's a lot to go through. And on top of that, thinking that God is upset at you, that's like a really heavy burden to bear. And I don't think that God is going to punish you for going through something that is a result of a fallen world that we live in. My views on mental health and spirituality before I got diagnosed was that they had to be separated. Like, there could be no intersection between them. It's that the two were very, very different from each other, and that even if you wanted to like talk about like spiritual aspects and psychological aspects, it was just a very new concept or a very hot and taboo topic, especially within the church and the Black church at large. And so for me, I had to really just dig deep into my own faith and also do my own research about the my bipolar diagnosis. And I found that increasing your education about your psychological symptoms, your psychological condition, can actually help you tie in the spiritual aspects or the spiritual practices that you need to do in order to help you heal. And so, what that looks like is for me, I know that if I don't get enough sleep at night, I'm going to have rapid or severe mood swings with my bipolar disorder. So I would make the effort to establish a sleeping routine. And that sleeping routine can incorporate journaling before I go to bed, listening to worship music before I go to bed, or just praying to get my body in a peaceful state so I can have a good night's sleep. That intersection between spiritual practices and psychological management can actually help you to be able to get the strength and also the hope to heal through and work through your mental health condition. And so those two things are just the reasons why mental health and spiritual health can and should intersect in order to establish healing. The third aspect of being a Black woman with bipolar disorder is the notion that I am not an emotional or an angry Black woman because I have bipolar disorder. And this really comes from the idea that people with bipolar disorder are moody, they have rapid mood swings, they're, aggressive during mania and all these different things. While, yes, some of that is true. And from my own personal experiences, during my manic episode, I was aggressive, I was pretty vulgar, and I was having rapid mood swings and from happy to depressed. And it was just a lot to go through at that time. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that I am an angry person. It doesn't mean that I'm a violent person. And it doesn't mean that I'm an angry Black woman who is mad at the world because she went through some difficult things. I am just a Black woman who so happens to have bipolar disorder, which also affects my mood. So expressing emotions does not make me an angry person. I learned that that moment, as traumatic as it was a symptom or a byproduct of something that was going on internally that I didn't really have the knowledge or the context for to be able to treat it at the time. With that being said, that does not mean that me experiencing severe mania makes me a bad person. And it also doesn't mean that having these experiences is something that you deserve to go through. Because, in all honesty, that is a moment that was very traumatic for not only me, but also my family members. And it's a moment that I sometimes think about. But at the same time, especially in me being a Christian, I believe that God could redeem anything. God could use the broken parts of our stories and turn them into something that's way better, something that's more purposeful, something that really elevates us as people. And so, with that, anger and blackness are not synonymous. And I know we hear that a lot in the news, like, oh, angry, aggressive Black men, or angry and sassy and, just ratchet, for lack of a better term, Black women are, just out here being angry at the world. And that's not true, because us as Black people, yes, we have a lot to be angry about, but that doesn't mean that we're angry 24/7. And so I just want to take that misconception, and especially in the context of living with bipolar disorder, you going through a mood or you experiencing an emotion is not a bad thing. Emotions are not good or bad. They are just indicators of what's going on internally. And so when you're experiencing emotion, especially anger, there are a lot of underlying things that could be going on. You could be sad, you could be angry, you could be disappointed, or you could be hungry even. Like, there are just a lot of different things that can go on beneath the surface of these emotions that we experience. And I don't think it's fair to label someone as an angry person without first understanding that that person is experiencing a lot of other things that may manifest and express itself as anger and aggression. So I just hate that stereotype, and I just want to be able to dismantle it, because there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And when we give superficial assumptions, it's something that can be harmful to a lot of people, especially people in communities of color. And finally, the last aspect of what it means to be a Black woman with bipolar disorder who is also a Christian is that I don't have to be strong all the time. And I really love this one because as a Black woman, I am often pressured by societal norms or in my own community, in my own circles, to be a strong person. And I can't tell you how many times that, and people have meant well by this, but I can't tell you how many times that I've gotten the compliment of, oh, you're such a strong person, or you're so strong, or wow, you really know how to hold it all together or carry everything. And while, yes, I do pride myself on being a strong woman, but that doesn't mean I have to constantly be strong. That doesn't mean that I have to bear the burden all the time. Like sometimes I just want to throw everything off my shoulders and just lie down and rest. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm human and I don't need to be strong all the time. And I really want to share this verse because I really think that it encapsulates everything that I've been through and also everything about the healing journey for me as a Black woman in Christ and a Black woman who is dealing with bipolar disorder. And the verse is Second Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9. And it says, "My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness." And I really love that verse because it just shows that your strength doesn't come from you. Your strength comes from God, and it is by His grace that you are able to move and have your being and also to heal. And so I am just so grateful that we have that hope, that we don't have to pressure ourselves to be strong all the time, and we don't have to pressure ourselves to always carry the weight of everybody's expectations. Like we can be human beings and feel our feelings. We can express our emotions. We can go through the tough times. We can love and appreciate the happy times. And I just am so grateful for this platform and this opportunity to get to share my experiences with you all today. And I thank you so much for listening. I thank you for taking time out of your day to tune in and to listen to my story. And I hope that this was very helpful. And I hope that it blessed you. And I also hope that you stay tuned for more empowering episodes on Rough Edges. Thank you for listening to another episode of Rough Edges Podcast with Sarah I. Fox. If you want more exciting updates on the podcast, follow on Instagram at rough.edges.podcast. You can also visit the official podcast website at www.roughedgespodcast.com. Thanks again for listening and have a wonderful day.